simply because it has a different meaning based in different countries. So I'll show you later on where you can find country-specific information about that. But for instance, in my country, Germany, a trunk road is basically a dual carriageway, which is not classified as a motorway, but one of the lower classes, but nevertheless has controlled access. There are other countries where trunk is basically an official category, and this is a national highway, which is somewhere between a motorway and a primary. So that definition may vary. And as far as the main roadway network is concerned, well, it goes down from primary through secondary, tertiary, and as I said initially, it goes by importance. That means primary highways, they link larger towns and cities, whereas tertiary highways are used to access smaller towns or villages. When you come down to hamlets, this would be unclassified. The name of unclassified is a bit unfortunate. It does most definitely not mean that this highway has no classification at all. It means just that this highway follows outside the classification from motorway down to tertiary. So unclassified is a little bit below tertiary. And about the same is a residential highway which accesses housing within the settlement. Then we've got a couple of classes below that scheme here. And service means service roads can have various functions. Service road is typically not used for through traffic, but only for a specific purpose. So it can access a single property. So imagine you're in the countryside and there is a farm or an industrial development next to a probably tertiary or unclassified highway. Then the road which accesses just this property would be classified as a service road. Service roads can also be used to access private properties, such as a larger company grounds or, for instance, a mall, or quite generally a parking structure. It is also used for the alleyways inside parking places. So service does by no means mean that it is not publicly accessible. Access classification is a different point. You can attribute the access that is only for customers or only for private use to basically any highway. The classification, as we talk about here, is importance. And as I said here, this does not necessarily correspond to the official classification made by the government. So track, that is often misunderstood. Track should only be used for access to agricultural land and forestry. So even if a road in an area you're mapping looks like maybe a track road in your country where you are, this does not necessarily mean that it's a track. So track means it's not for general use, not to get from A to B, but only to access fields and forests. And along this stretch here, from motorway to track, we're always talking about highways which are accessible to vehicles. If a highway is not wide enough in order to allow vehicles to move along, then this would be a path. Depending on the resolution of the aerial imagery we look at, I would rather guess that most of the ways which you can see on aerial imagery are probably tracks, and paths are typically pretty difficult to see on a satellite imagery. So how do we find a closer explanation for all that? So, I mean, this sounds, what I've been presenting here sounds rather theoretical, first of all, but more guidance, of course, is always welcome, and most definitely, you won't be lost. So when you are working on a project for the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team through the tasking manager, then the ideal situation is that the project manager who set up the project left some instructions for you. And usually that should be the case. So this here is, for instance, current project here from the earthquake in Morocco. And the instructions tab first talks about buildings, and quite good with lots of images here. And then, there is also a section on roads and paths. And in this case, it refers to a wiki page set up specifically for this purpose. So if we go there, how tagging here specifically in Morocco, then you see that, well, they say there are some official classification and there is something outside this classification. It gives a few explanations what tract means, for instance, as I said, access to agricultural land, forestry, wood, and things like that, but not any other service. And minor dwellings here, that's what unclassified is used for. So it basically follows the general rule and gives some more country-specific images, which can help you assess what you're looking at. If a project manager was not quite so helpful and didn't put up a complete set of explanations here, then the next resource I would look at is the general wiki page here. So the general wiki page on, there we are. That's the highway key. Basically starts here by telling you, what I've said here, but on a much more general level. The next most important roads is not going to help you. Often links larger towns, often links towns is probably a bit better. Then the system of link roads, which are typically access ramps to other highways, is explained. The special road types like service or a track road. And it also talks about additional tags. How to tag cycleways and life cycle tags with highways under constructions, and a couple of other useful attributes like a ford when you have a crossing of a highway with a waterway. It also gives you a couple of images, but I will quickly show you that this is maybe not too helpful. So typically, the OpenStreetMap wiki is the definitive reference for tagging. So if you're unsure, looking at the page for the highway tag is probably a good idea. Then there is a system of country-specific pages on the wiki. It's called the list of territory-based projects. And the mileage varies. There are some countries where there is no additional information on tagging. We've seen the one on Morocco as well. I think the one in South Africa is also pretty exhaustive here. South African road tagging guidelines. So it's always, and then here we are, proposed standards for the official classifications and how to do that if you are outside of this classification. And also, what street name abbreviations, as you can read them on signs, might be used. So the mileage varies what these country-specific projects explain, but when you're mapping in a specific country, either the hot tasking manager doesn't have any detailed explanations or you're mapping outside of a hot project. This is where I would go to and look what suggestions they can present in order to get the tagging of the classification right. So how does this translate into the editors? We now might have a good idea what an unclassified road or a tertiary road is. Well, first of all, yeah, I was talking about those images, which you can see here on those wiki pages. I said, well, it's maybe not the best idea to stick to these images because the mileage may vary considerably across the globe. I've compiled some mapillary images from tertiary highways from different parts of the globe. And as you can see, well, it is most definitely not possible to catch that all with one imagery on such a wiki page. Therefore, my suggestion is, first of all, look at those resources I was just mentioning and familiarize yourself with the area. Before you start mapping highways and classifying them, look at the satellite imagery so that you get a feeling what kind of settlements we have. How do major settlements and smaller settlements look like? How do towns, which probably have some industry or some office buildings or administrative buildings, how do that look like? And how do the roads look like which connect them? So that you can get a feeling what might be a tertiary or an unclassified road. And because, well, as you can see, tertiary roads can have basically any standard depending on where they are on this planet. So after that, you should have an idea what classification should be attributed to a highway you'll be mapping. Well, how do you get that into OpenStreetMap? So ID groups its road under two headings. They have major roads and they have minor roads. Major roads is anything from motorway down to tertiary, and including those links, which are usually the access ramps for highways. Minor roads, start at the unclassified road. It's good that ID a couple of years ago improved that because previously it was only called minor road. Now they stick to the classification from the wiki. We've got the residential roads, we've got the service roads, and we've got the track, and it explicitly here says it's land access, which means agricultural or forestry land. There are 2 points noteworthy. First of all, I've seen projects where people started classifying roads as living streets in residential areas. Please note that a living street is something different from a residential road. A residential road is a road which simply is outside of, it's not a main through road, but it is a road which accesses the different houses in a settlement. A living street is a legal construct. So in my country, a living street means that pedestrians may walk freely along that street. They have the right of way. Cars may only drive at something like 15 or 20 kilometers an hour. And they may, well, and as I said, pedestrians have the right of way, even if they are walking in the middle of the road. So this is a specific context and most typically will not apply to the areas where HOT is active. So don't use living street when you mean residential road. In JOSM, there is an option that you can classify a road if you don't know what it is specifically, and it would be the tag highway equals road. This one can not be actively selected here in ID. Of course, in ID, you have the option to enter tag values yourself. This way, you could do it. You run across a road in which someone else mapped like that in the editor, and it will be labeled unknown road. This simply means that for instance, someone was mapping from satellite imagery and the resolution was not so good. So he really wasn't sure about the proper classification. But yeah, so JOSM, there it's a little bit different. We've got two entries as well. We've got highways, which is basically anything a car drive on from motorway down to, well, service road. Links are in here as well. Living street I was mentioning here. So yeah, and the unclassified road here, that's the bottom. And well, unfortunately, well, these are streets here. And unfortunately, the ways are not only ways unsuitable for vehicles because it also contains the track. Other than that, we have the path, We were talking about paths being unsuitable for something with 4 wheels. And there are also, well, if it's dedicated, that path for some specific way, here you can even select that directly. So everything is in here as well. The labels are those from the wiki, but they are simply organized a bit differently. Well, when it comes to mapping, we do not only want to map, of course, we should always check what we are doing. So there are a few things which are useful in this case. DOSM has its built-in validator, and it checks for quite a few properties which can go wrong with highways. So any abbreviations will be flagged. Of course, incorrect tagging of crossings, whether it's highway and highway, or highway and railway, or highway and waterway. Incorrect tagging of sideway walks and turning restrictions, also tunnels and bridges without the proper layer tag. Unconnected highways, and intersections of highways with any kind of improper objects, such as buildings. So DOSM's built-in validator usually runs when you try to upload, but you can also run it across an area on your own in order to see if there are any other problems you might clean up when committing your additions. IDE has something similar. It's the Issues tab. Works a bit different. Of course, it also uses a couple of the same properties in here, such as incorrect tagging of crossings or missing layer tags. But for instance, it also looks for generic names. So if you map, for instance, a road, and it simply carries the name road or path, then it would flag that because it's highly improbable that a road simply is called a road. Names, of course, should always be the given names. And if you are mapping with DOSM, then it's not only that you can run the validator, but there are also a few paint styles which flag problematic situations, and they prove particularly helpful. So I'd like to mention 2 of them, and they are both available from the setup in DOSM from the plugins menu. The first one is the inline validation paint style. It was provided by Apple. It flags a couple of bits. For instance, this one here is a dead end one-way. Certainly the one-way property on this highway is wrong, because otherwise, this doesn't make any sense. There is a simple check for roads intersecting buildings, but, well, paint styles, they are, well, it's basically CSS what they use, so they can't do any complex geometrical calculations, which means because they only check whether a node belongs to both a road and, for instance, a building. But of course, well, they cannot find this intersection here right in the middle, because that would require some geometric calculations, and a paint style can't do that. This here, well, it's a little bit offset, but yeah, this here is that bridge. It's a bridge over a canal, carries the tag bridge, but obviously there was no layer, should carry layer +1. So it does not catch all. So when you're mapping with DOSM, really do use DOSM's built-in validator. But using that paint style can draw your attention to quite a lot of problems. And, well, of course, it doesn't only take care of roads, it also shows intersecting and overlapping buildings and things like that. So I use that inline validation paint style more or less always when I'm mapping. And that one was provided by Apple. There is another interesting bit which was provided by a distinguished member of the training working group. And it's a good idea to color ways a bit more differently, because this paint style makes sure that the differently tagged highways are distinctly colored so that you can easily see when a highway tag changes, for instance, and figure out which is the proper one. Apart from that, it has 2 interesting features. First of all, it colors buildings differently than any default paint style. And most importantly, you can change that building color from the context menu. By default, it's this dark green. I mean, in an area like this is probably no bad idea. If you're mapping somewhere in a tropical area, then green is probably not a color which will stand out from the background. So then you could use pink or whatever you like, something which gives a good contrast. And if you're mapping for humanitarian projects, particularly something like post-disaster mapping, then usually damaged and destroyed tanks are attributed to buildings which are no longer useful. And so these stand out pretty clearly here. So that's another nice attribute. So, well, and I think if you've got other ideas after playing around with this for a while, Martin is pretty active on Hot's Slack, so I'm sure he has an open ear for other suggestions. And yeah, so this covered the first half hour of this. I mean, mainly the theory, the backgrounds of what this tagging scheme is about. I haven't quite well paid attention to the chat. Do we have some open questions I still need to address?
Yes, there is a few questions. One from Benjamin Richard. Is there a list of examples which are well mapped, meaning that they follow the recommendations?
A published list, I'm not quite sure. And I mean, the problem in this case is that, well, mapping is a continuous activity. So that means if an area is well mapped right now, it doesn't make much sense to pin that to a wiki page, for instance, because it can, well, 1 year afterwards, might be messed up. So a list of examples should include then, yeah, basically screenshots rather than an area where you can look on your own. I'm not aware of one. I hope in the next part here of this talk, Ralph will give you good and bad examples. But yeah, I'll note that maybe it's a good idea to compile some examples of maybe some residential or rural areas mapped well and put that up in screenshots with a few examples. Duly noted. Hope we do that.
And another one from Martin. When country-specific wiki and OSM highway classification clash, what should we use?
Well, I think usually OpenStreetMap says that mapping and things like that should be discussed in local communities. So I would prefer something agreed by the local community over something which is general, because as I've already shown you in my examples about tertiary roads, the mileage, how they look like, can vary considerably. So presenting pictures on a general wiki page, they can't be accurate for the complete globe. And even some suggestion examples for service ways, for instance, or what a path exactly is, might also vary from country to country. So country-specific guidelines should always take precedence, in my view.
And yeah, one final one from Charles. Why is it that there are no tagging specific guides for some countries?
Well, they should come from the local community, of course. It wouldn't make sense if I was writing up some guidelines for somewhere in South America, of course. And OpenStreetMap activity varies wildly from country to country. There are some which are really active and some where, well, maybe just a handful of people are usually mapping in that country. And well, they don't care about the wiki so much. So OpenStreetMap does not have a centralized authority. There are some people who try to put up central guidelines. That's what's put in the general pages in the OpenStreetMap wiki. But there is no authority which will rule what mapping is correct and what mapping is improper. So we always have to rely on people, well, like all of us, who engage and try to write up some guidelines which are country specific.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. No other questions?
Okay, well, if questions occur, of course, write them down in the chat anytime. And those of us who are not currently presenting will take care of that. And with that, I think, yeah, this is what I wanted to show you about fundamentals. And next would be Ralph, who will dive into the details of applying this into practical examples.
Right. Thank you, Michael. If you could stop sharing your screen. Right, folks.
It's perfectly visible now, Ralph. Yeah.
Okay, you can see the OpenStreetMap. Is that okay?
We can see your screen, yes, and the OpenStreetMap.
Okay. To start off with, we're going to look at what it looks like in cities that Michael has been talking about. So for an example, I'm going to go to my hometown. Here you can see the south of England, and you can see that the red roads are motorways and the trunk system, and also the primary. Now, as you can see here, a highway can change its classification along its length if you have a motorway and a trunk, or a motorway and a secondary, even a motorway and a tertiary. But if it's a secondary or a primary or a trunk, it should be continuous, except for the interruptions of highways. They should be continuous, so that the classification remains the same along the length of the road. And as I zoom in, you can see that taking place. Here you have a different link here between the two secondary roads. So you can see the links there. And this is continuous through to the next highway, upper level highway. They should link higher level highways and not lower level highways. Now, what I want to show you is some of the things that are not usually mapped, but are still quite important to our highway system. One of those that people have a difficulty with is pedestrian ways. So pedestrian way can be an area. We're going to look at the Guildhall here. So let's just go to my JOSM so that we can have a look at this. Okay, now here it is. If I click on that, right, the best way to show this is to give it an area, yes, and highway pedestrian. So there you have, it's not a road or a way as you know it. It's an actual area, but it's designated a highway pedestrian. And those two will give you one of these pedestrian squares that you can then map. The other way, of course, is where a road has been converted to a pedestrian way. And you can see that here. And that again, let's see if we can get it up. Right. So once again, the whole road, not just the center line, the whole road is shown as an area, yes, and highway pedestrian. Again, the same as the square. So those two are for your pedestrian ways. You can add different things like foot, yes, motor vehicle, no, the name of the square or the name of the road, that can be added as well. And you can see that you can add multiple facets to this. And this one, you can see again, is area yes, highway pedestrian. So those are the things that you need to remember for pedestrian roads and for large squares. Now, another thing that I want to look at is footways. There's a difference between a footway that runs through a park area or runs through a residential area, and the difference between a footway, which is alongside a road. Now, the footway through the park area is designated highway footway. You can give it surface. You can say pedestrians, yes, bicycles, yes, motorized vehicles, no. You can add all the kind of things that you, but for the sidewalk, this one has got something missing. It says highway footway, but we need to add another one, which is footway equals sidewalk. Okay, now that would be correct for a pedestrian footway which runs parallel to a road, okay, and is part of the road structure. It's, in other words, it's also known as a pavement in some areas as well. Now, these footways and are not the same as paths. Paths are not necessarily paved ways, they are generic. So in other words, they can be only created through common usage, through a rural area, through a park, like a person has been, or people have been walking across the grass in a normal park, and they've created a path because of common usage. That would not be a footway because it was not specifically built for footways. Now, there's another thing that people don't quite understand is how do you put a stairs into a footway? You can't have stairs on a road because cars can't climb stairs, but they certainly do appear on paths and footways. So this is now classified, once again, it's still highway, but it's just plain steps. And you can see that this can be added for any part or section of a footway or a path. The same way is a footway can have a tunnel, which would then be layer -1, or it can be a bridge, which would be layer 1. Okay, so by layering that, you can have footways on a bridge over something, or footways through a passageway underneath something. Right, having done that, let's move on to a few other things. Boom, 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 boom. For our next one, we're going to try and look at a rural area. And for that, we are going to go to Madagascar. And we're going to choose a rural area in Madagascar to talk about that. Right, so sorry, area was too large. So let's go smaller. Right, so we have a rural area here. We can see that there's a main road that is running through. It's a tertiary. And we can see here the smoothness is very bad and the surface is unpaved. So this is once again an indicator of what Michael was saying. What we would understand as a tertiary road that's nice and paved all along its length. In other countries, this may not be the case, and the kind of road that you see may not be the same or similar to what you know in your own country, or other classifications. Right, let's just open up Bing. Right, so having got that, we can see that we have small villages here, but these villages do not have residential roads, and this is incorrect. You can see here, this has been shown as a track. Now, you should not have a track in a residential area. A track is a private road for farmers and foresters to get around their lands and to work on the cultivated lands or farmlands or forestry areas. So this is totally incorrect. This should have been a residential road. So please remember that tracks do not appear in cities and towns. Now, the reason why some people show tracks is because they only see a big sand area. With the result is they don't understand that as being the paved roads, paved residential roads that they see in other cities and towns. This is not the case. This is still a residential road. Now, this is a difficulty of classifying in different countries. Different countries have different standards of roads. So please remember that wherever you are in the world, you do not have a track in a town. It's purely for rural farmland and forestry. So that is wrong. Now, here again, we see they've put in a track, but this connection here is way too thin for a vehicle and should be a path. Okay, so please look at what you're seeing, and there are thicknesses involved. The width of a road, if you have got your measurement, you just need to take a measurement of the width of the road. If it's larger than 1.8 meters, you can get a four-wheeled vehicle down there. But if it's smaller than 1.8 meters, it's very unlikely, except under extreme conditions, you get a 4x4. Okay, so please use your measurement tool if you're not sure. Right. Now, the other thing is, if I can show you now. When you go into the rural area, a public road that everybody uses from the main road system to smaller communities is the unclassified road. And the unclassified road gets you to these communities, okay? And but a classified road does not need to continue if there is no further a road ahead. Now, inside the town or the community it gets to, you will change to a residential. Now, this also is for rural areas where you have farmlands along the way, and this unclassified road is the public road that gets you to all the various little farms that are along the way. However, once you get there from the community, the farmyard, the residential area, to the farmlands and the cultivated fields, that will be a track, because that is for the farmers and the people to get to their farmlands and to work on the farmlands. So anything after the residential area going to the farmlands will be a track. The track is a private road. It's not necessarily used by members of the public to get to their destination. So bear that in mind. The difference between a track and a unclassified or residential is whether it's a public road or a private road. Right. Now I'm going to try and show you something else. Right, rural roads mapping. Okay, what happens here is what you can see is a rural road area. Now, the problem with rural roads is some people decide, all right, we'll show everything as unclassified because I don't know the difference. And we end up with something like this. Now, if you zoom in, we can see that this is a continuous road running and doglegging, and that is not very good. First of all, that part there is off the public road and is going to a private farmyard. So that should be split off, okay, and changed into unclassified. It should be a service road, okay, and because it's taking you to a residential area, residential place, you can add service driveway, okay? So that is the same sort of thing that you get off a residential road when you turn into a person's driveway onto their property and up to their garage. So that is the same, a driveway to a property. Now, anything after that would be, after that you get to the property, would be going onto farmland, so that would be tracks. Here we can see again, this has been shown as an unclassified road, but in actual fact, the only part of road is this piece through here, which connects to the building. This, in actual fact, here should be a path. It's way too narrow and too windy for a highway. So that should be a path, and this should be a path. So you can see that understanding what you're doing is paramount to this. Going along here is not going, first of all, should not be connected up like this. Where you have intersections like that, split the road so that you don't get that. So you can classify this road as going to the farmland. So that is a track. Up to here, this would be accessing the residences, and that looks like a path and not a road. So please, once again, that looks like a path, not a road. And this does not go to any residence or community or anything, and should be a track because it's purely for the farmlands here. So these are important things. Now, another thing that's important with highways is all of these should be junctions. They should all link up and join. So if we choose a highway that goes through the whole area, right, and we use Control, this is in JOSM, Control, Shift, and press E. And we can see that they all light up. Now that shows that they are all properly connected. And this is very important. A routing software that does not have a node on the junction will not recognize that as a junction and won't consider turning off onto any of those roads because there's no connection to it. So please understand that you must connect highways with nodes wherever they meet or wherever they cross, unless one goes under and one goes over. So please remember that in the rural areas. Service roads are used for access to industrial areas, industrial complexes, individual buildings, driveways, that sort of thing. Right. I've got to watch the time. And we are going to go to another area. And let's just see. And we are going to go to El Fasher. Now here we are. We are in El Fasher, in Sudan, and you can see that there is a major road running through this area, and we have considerable built-up area as well, and we have main roads. Now I am going to show you what happens when we get multiple tracks. Right, so you've got a tertiary road here. So we all think of tertiary roads as link roads. They're pretty good condition because they join up towns and that sort of thing. But not all countries have the same situation. Okay, here we have El Fasher, and it's quite an important road. But let's switch that off and actually have a look. And we can see what happens here. Here is the road going through, but you've also got secondary roads all crisscrossing and going past. Here you can see again little roads coming off and going back on. And here you can see again multiple roads going through the area here. Multiple roads, multiple roads. Now this happens because the highway may not be paved or may be susceptible to flooding. When it floods, it becomes impassable, and people try to find a way around it by bumping off the road and going around it. But how do we depict something like that? We don't show it as multiple roads. That would be impossible. Some of those would be absolutely impossible to show in all the multiple versions that you get. So the problem here is that we should just run one single road through all of that. Let's just show you another example of this. Let's get rid of this and go to OpenStreetMap. Right, here's another example here. Let's load that into JOSM. You can see it's a a main road again with a sizable town. This is in southern Niger, and pop into JOSM quickly and have a look here. Now you can see this is a secondary road, and you can see here roads are just all over the place, and you have to identify what is actually happening or what isn't. Now let's just zoom in again and have a look. Now you've got the main road, but then it breaks up. You can see here, this is an area that is liable to flooding. It breaks up into an undiscernible road, and then you get multiple roads here. You can see multiple roads because this probably is liable to flooding, and they all come back in, down back to a single road again. Now this is quite common in areas where you've got unsurfaced roads that become too muddy for anyone to be able to use. Right, so just show a single road. Don't try and show all the myriad of multiple roads when you are doing that. Okay, single roads, please. This keeps it neat. Now, here's an example of where the tertiary road has not continued on to the highway. It's broken by an unclassified road. That is totally wrong. This tertiary road should have continued through because it's a higher category road than the unclassified road. So that is incorrect. Please watch out for that and make sure that this does not happen. Correct it if you see it, please. Right, I'm running down to the end of time, so I just need to check. We are going to go to the Caledon River in South Africa, and I want to show you how that there's only 3 ways that a waterway interacts with a highway. That is a bridge, which is a road going over the waterway. There is a culvert, which is the water going underneath the highway. And there is a ford where the road and the waterway are at the same level and the road actually goes through the water, or a dry. Now, a bridge, bridges are not too difficult to identify. In many cases, you will see that there's a different coloration between the highway and the bridge. Some cases you can actually see segments of the bridge, and also quite a strong shadow alongside the side of the bridge going over the waterway. That is depicted with a bridge, yes, and because it's going over the highway, it's a layer equals 1. Okay. Now, here is a case where the bridge has not been created. What we would do is we would select the nodes on either side and split the road, P, and add, keeping the highway tertiary and the surface as normal. We then add a bridge. So bridge, and yes, okay. And now we also need to add layer. Layer is 1 because it goes over. Okay, right, and there you have your bridge. There is a neat tool called the double split, which will help you to make that. But if you look at our JOSM webinar, that will explain how to use the double split tool for that sort of thing. You can also use the double split for culverts and for, right, now, a culvert. Let's have a look here. Here we are. We've got the road running along. It's a raised road, and it's got a culvert underneath. The culvert, the waterway, is this one running down here. Select and add waterway river. Do you see how important it is to learn what the tagging is so that you can very quickly do something? Now, with a bridge and a culvert, the waterway and the road do not share a common node. The one goes over and the other goes under. So here I will, once again, because the water is under the road, I need to put the culvert on the waterway. So I will split the waterway by pressing P on my keyboard, and I will add tunnel equals culvert. Okay. And because that is running underneath the highway, that needs to have a layer -1. -1 goes underneath. Okay. And there you have it. Now, they do not link with a common node. The one is below the other one. So those two do not have a common node. Now, the last one is where you have a ford. Okay, so you have a, select that and add highway unclassified. Okay, you can see that the road discolors when it goes through the waterway. That means that there's been some recent water running through, and therefore the road has been discolored by the water going over it. In other cases, you will see that the road is still clear, and that means it's been dry for some time and they've been driving through it. But that does not mean to say that it's not a ford. It is still a ford because a waterway crosses. So let's add the waterway in. Add waterway river. Okay, now you can see here that I have given a common node. The reason why is because the road and the waterway are at the same level, and I need that node to add a ford. Yes. Okay, and we then have the ford. Right, now, one last thing about layers. Let's just see if I can do that quickly. And right, I'm going to go up here to the UK again. There's a good example just north of London. And here we have a layered highway with multiple layers. So I'm going to show you the multiple layers of the highway. So we come up here and you've got the highway along the bottom, which does not have any layer at all. So your next thing is you've got a bridge over, a flyover over the highway, and you can see that that is layer 1. Next, you've got the highway running over above that, and that is layer 2. And then you have another link highway running over that, which is layer 3. So you can see that you can have multiple layers on top of each other to be able to depict complex situations like this. Right. I'm going to hand back to Michael now, and you can take it from there. Back to you, Michael.
Yeah, there is one interesting question which you can follow up. What about those situations where a seasonal stream waterway is also used as a road?
Right. In most cases, a seasonal stream is a road that's used as a road is because, like in Australia and in the Sahel and the Sahara and other desert areas, any water that floods through the area leaves a residue and bakes the road hard, bakes the riverway hard, and therefore is resurfaced so that people can use it as a highway. Now, to depict that, it is where it is quite a wide a waterway. I suggest that you put the waterway alongside the highway so that you can see that there is a waterway and a highway there. Where it is not possible, then you link the two together and they run down. Because remember, when you draw the highways, you are drawing the center line of a highway. So it's important for you to remember that if there's a waterway alongside, it cannot be the same center line as the road. It has to be alongside the road. And in many cases, that is how you depict that. The same way you don't connect a residential area to a road, because the residential area means that people live on that piece of land, and you can't have people living in the middle of the road or on the left-hand lane or the right-hand lane. So do not link your residential areas to the middle of the road. The same goes for farmlands, the same goes for buildings, the same goes for many other things. Forests, don't link that to the center line of the road, please. Right. Back to you.
That was basically the only one here. So I think, yeah, thanks, Ralph, for this exhaustive review of different situations. And I think, yeah, then I'll hand over to Jeffrey, who will get the last part of this webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And there's just one also in the chat that I wanted to hear Ralph's view about why do we even have unclassified as a tag for roads? Ralph, do you have a comment on that before I start?
Right. Yes, that's a good question. Basically, they were looking for something to call the rural roads that linked up small villages. Now, in many cases, in a larger community, Western countries, this is not that well used because you have higher level roads all over the place. But when you start getting into rural areas of the more or lesser developed countries, of course, that becomes something that is new. It's called unclassified because in the UK, these are not A roads or B roads. They may be minor rural roads. Now, we don't have a minor rural classification, and that is sadly lacking as well. So the unclassified is supposedly to link small communities and remote locations. But we don't have a minor unclassified or a minor rural road to show the other roads in the rural areas that are not tracks. So, I mean, this is just a omission on the part of OpenStreetMap, and it does create complications. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. And I think because I think OpenStreetMap was started in the UK, maybe some of the tags that were used from the beginning followed some UK kind of conventions. But yeah, it's kind of a global map, and it's a bit hard to find like classifications which match each and every country. So yeah, in this last part, I'm going to talk about common traps and pitfalls when mapping with roads or highways on OpenStreetMap. But I think most of them have been touched by my colleagues. So I'm also going to be quick on this, and then maybe we can also have some time for more questions at the end. Yeah, so the first one really that I want to stress, which has already been touched, is highway unclassified. I think this is a common error when people map on OpenStreetMap, especially if someone has been mapping buildings a lot. And because when mapping buildings, we have a tag that we use, which is building equals yes, which means yes, you can't categorize a building, whether it is residential or commercial. And yeah, when you come with the same mentality when mapping roads, you may easily think that highway unclassified is because I'm not sure of which type, so I'll just use unclassified. But I think like it has been pointed out, yeah, unclassified roads are public roads, also the roads which, you know, take like vehicles, cars. So it's not good to map like a small path and then you try to categorize that as unclassified. And it's because also like you have also to think about the usage of people who are going to use this data. If it is like a routing kind of algorithm that's supposed to, you know, to direct a car, you tell the car that, yeah, this road can be used by a car and only to reach there, and it's just a small narrow road. But because someone tagged it as unclassified, and then yeah, that would not be very good data. So yeah, unclassified roads are less important than tertiary roads. They are considered to be usable by cars, and they're not residential streets or agricultural tracks. Yeah, so examples are roads that can be used by local traffic, or roads of rural importance near the outskirts of the town and cities. And I think always the best place to look when you're not sure about which classification to use is the OSM wiki, which has documentation and also some pictures, but also like pointed out by my colleagues, yeah, the way an unclassified road may look in Africa may not be the same in another part of the world. Okay. Another kind of thing that you will find are isolated roads. So these would be roads which, you know, are not connected to any other road. So there are roads, you know, in the middle of somewhere, but not really connected to other roads. So I think like Ralph mentions, it's very important to make sure that roads are connected to each other. So sometimes someone may do this accidentally, or they don't have enough information or where they're mapping. Sometimes you may be mapping using the tasking manager, and because you are limited to just, you know, your task, and you're not able to connect a road to another existing road. So these situations sometimes happen, but the point is that yeah, connected roads enable accurate routing and navigation. So applications and services that rely on a connected road network, yeah, will get confused when they try to use this kind of data. And one tool that's really very good to find such examples and fix them is MapRelay. And I'll just show one example here, which is from Cameroon. So as you can see, yeah, this particular road here is connecting, yeah, like two households, but you can see from here that it's not connected to the main road. The same case, there is this small road that is connecting these two households, but again, it's not connected to any other roads. So one way how you can do that is, you know, to use MapRelay and find these small challenges and try to fix them and make the roads data better. So if I look closely on this, I'm just going to go ahead and open it in JOSM, and this is how it looks like in JOSM. Yeah, maybe just confirm, Michael or Ralph, can everyone see my JOSM?
Yes, Jeffrey, we can see your JOSM.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, as we can see in this particular example, yes, we do have a village here, and we do have also this road. So, yeah, if I click on here, I can see, you know, the tag that is used. So this is highway, residential, surface ground. Yes, it's connecting two villages, but then if a car is trying to access this village, these houses here, and going through this road, which is highway residential, how would it, you know, access it? And also the other question, is it even a residential road, like, or is it just a path that's connecting the different houses? So if I switch off my data here to just look closely at the imagery, you can see clearly that this is just a very small path. And it's not really a highway that is, you can classify as residential. Because if it's a residential road, then that means it would be able to use a car. You can also look at the one here. Yeah, so I think this connects back to this. And also, I think there is a likelihood that there is a road underneath this tree that people use to access these houses here. But yeah, this one is connected, but this one is not connected to any major road. So yeah, that's what you do, like, to connect this back to the main road and make sure that, yeah, if someone is going to connect to here to these houses, then they can move from here to here, but also fix the tag. Yeah, from highway residential to a tag that is kind of for a minor road like this one. Okay, so that's one particular example. And I'll switch back here to show you, yeah. This one also was touched by Michael. We have living street and also residential. They all have residential areas, but they do have different purposes, or there is some kind of small difference. So a living street is used for roads that are designed explicitly to prioritize pedestrians and also create a more kind of communal shared space. So they have always a speed limit, which is like 15 kilometers per hour or 20 kilometers per hour. Whereas highway residential, they really provide access to residential areas, but don't necessarily emphasize, you know, the same kind of pedestrian-centric features as the living streets. Yeah, so I think that's kind of like the small difference. But yeah, the living street tag has more kind of restriction, and it gives more, it's more kind of pedestrian centric. Yeah, another one that is very important is also classification through settlements or through towns. You may be tempted to map, you know, it can be highway, tertiary, or secondary, or primary road, but because it is passing through, like, you know, a residential area, you may think, yeah, I want to tag that section of the road as highway residential, but that wouldn't be right. It's better to continue with the same tagging to go through that kind of settlement. And one of the reasons for this is because yeah, routing or navigation applications, they use the highway classification. So starting like from like for example, trunk road, that's like okay, motorway, which is the highest, then trunk road, then primary road, then secondary, then then tertiary, and then residential, and so on. So the order of importance starts from the highest. So the routing application will use that order also when trying to recommend a path for you to follow to go to a particular area. There's an example here of a trunk road. So this is in a town called Busia, which is in eastern Uganda. So you can see from here to here, it is a trunk road. And it's the same type of road that also connects Busia to Jinja, which is another major city. So you can see here it is tagged as a trunk road. That's why it is pink, but then it's tagged as primary here. So I think what would be recommended would be for this road to continue being a trunk road because it's connecting two major cities in two different regions of the country. So yeah, on the Kenyan side, it is tagged as a trunk road, but then this side it is tagged as a primary road. But then it'd be good to have like the same level of tagging because the importance of this road is the same, although it is kind of on two opposite sides of the town. So yeah, like when it reaches this part of the town, it has changed from trunk and now it is primary, but the importance is really the same. So the same kind of tagging level should be used to continue that way. Okay. Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to share is also what has been talked about previously, which is mapping dried riverbeds as roads. So this is a very good example from here. It also has a road which I can say is isolated because this is a trunk road, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere. So if a road is a trunk road, according to the OpenStreetMap wiki for the tagging, it should be, a road that is connecting two major cities or town in terms of importance. But then I can see here an example of a road which is trunk, which is meaning it's a very important road, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Not only that, but also there is a river here, which just ends abruptly where there is a bridge. So something here is not right. So let us look at it closely together. Okay, so yeah, this is how it looks like in OSM. I can see this is my trunk road here. This is the river. So let us go to JOSM now and try to look at that more closely. Okay, so yeah, this is the place in JOSM, and I'll just select this role here just to show you that the key here is highway trunk. So someone mapped it as a trunk road, but obviously it shouldn't be. So the first thing to ask yourself, is it even a road? Because when you look here, there is a river. Okay, this is Waterway River. And the river ends right here, but then we can see there is a bridge here. So the river does not continue through, but instead where it should be continuing, we have a trunk road. So yeah, if I switch off the data here, yeah, you can see that it looks actually like a road. You may be, if you're not very critical, you may easily tag it as a road. But because if you look here closely, this is a major road here. It's not a major road, but I said a road that's connecting like two villages, but also like there is inconsistent tagging. So this side, this road is unclassified. And when you cross this side, it is a path. So definitely this road should have the same tagging from this side to this side. But also, like I pointed out, this shouldn't be a road, instead it's a river. So how can you easily tell that it is a river? Like I said, look at the satellite imagery very closely. You can see there is like vegetation around this river, and it continues around. When you go here, you can see like the vegetation is thicker because this is a place which has water. It might be a seasonal river. That's why you see, yeah, it's now dry, and you may think it is a road, but it is not. So basically, to fix this, what triggered me to look at this area is because this was a highway trunk, meaning it's a big road, but it's basically appearing where it doesn't need to be. So yeah, definitely I will first of all delete this. yeah, this road. I mean, yeah, because it doesn't have to be a road there. And then basically what I'll do is to continue with this river. Yeah, and maybe I'll tag this river as as seasonal. That sometimes it may not be there. Okay. All right, so the river continues. I'm not going to go towards the end, but then I need to add the tag to show that this is actually a waterway. So it's either waterway stream or waterway river. Yes, so that means I have, fixed the, sorry, this is waterway, not water. Yeah, so basically, normally when you're going to be, mapping roads, you're going to be fixing a lot of existing issues that are already existing on the map that have been mapped by other people. And yeah, there are different tools that you can use to kind of identify those issues. One of them are map paint styles, but also like I mentioned, you can use map relay. There's some challenges there, which will point to isolated roads that you can fix and connect them to other roads. You may also find kinky roads, which have like very sharp bends, which maybe someone has moved accidentally a node and is not aligned to the main road. Yeah, but also you can use, for example, queries, and then you query, for example, if you query for all trunker roads in a particular country, then you may see, some of those roads that are isolated where the tagging is not consistent across the length of the road. I think that's it. I'll end there and see if there is any questions, but also we'll allow people to unmute. If you have any question, you can also put up your hand as well and ask. It can be a question for me or for Ralph or for Michael. Thank you, and back to you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. And so there haven't been any specific questions for you on the chat so far. Just going, well, we're still waiting for other points to come in. I'll just share the last slide here, which means, of course, you can stay in touch with us and ask questions after this meeting as well. We have a mapper support mailing list, so you can write there. If you want to get in touch with the training working group in general, it also is reachable through email. Other than that, a good means of communication is the hot Slack. If you haven't heard of that before, point your browser to slack.hotosm.org, and there you will find instructions how to connect. Jeffrey, there is something?
Yeah, I just wanted to show, I think Fabi had a question on how we make the data open up automatically in JOSM. So I'll just show that very quickly in just 1 minute. Okay.
Problem here.
So, yeah, just sharing my screen again. So yeah, at the Fabi, if you want to open an area it automatically opens up in JOSM, you need to go to Edit, Preferences, and then you go to Remote Control here, and make sure you enable Remote Control here, and then say OK. So yeah, that means if you have an area from OpenStreetMap here and you go to Edit with Remote Control, then that area will automatically open up in JOSM. Just wanted to show that very quickly. Thank you. And back to you, Michael.
Okay, just put up this last slide again. So as I said, Slack is another means of contact. Through this website, you can get access, and then you will find yourself in the general channel. There are a couple of channels out there. Mapper support is one of them. The training working group has a channel. There is one for the tasking manager. Just browse around that. And of course, it is no 24/7, 15-minute support, but you usually find quick answers. And of course, the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, which organizes this webinar, has a website as well if you want to know more about it or are looking for other ways how to interact with us. So, yeah, that brings us to the end of this webinar. Yeah, we had between 50 and 60 participants today. This is quite a high number. This shows us that, well, we selected the right topic, I guess. I hope there was something for everyone in here. And yeah, whether it's positive or negative, we'd like some feedback. So don't be shy, drop us a line, write us something in Slack. And yeah, you can also, of course, make suggestions for other webinars if you think there are some topics which are of general interest. And with that, I'd like to thank, of course, my colleagues here, Jeffrey and Ralph, and wish you all a very good weekend, and enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Have a nice weekend.